the other hand, it will not alleviate or help anyone, poor people. In fact, it will bring greater hardships. Just imagine banning used tires. How many people will be able to afford new tires now? Most of the tires that are used in our system are used tires. Now, from a safety perspective, that you need to probably look at the quality of the used tires. But when you ban them completely, you're transferring money in the pockets of the few people who are importing new tires, and then you're taking money out of the pockets of those people, ordinary people, who can only afford used tires for their vehicle. So the cost of the tire now, for new tires, if you have to put on your vehicle, will be probably about 10–15% of the cost of acquisition of your vehicle. And furthermore, vehicles beyond 8 years now will be banned. So a lot of vehicles that were coming into this country, and people were older, they cost a bit more in foreign currency for the country because they're not as efficient, etc. They're a bit more polluting. But at least a section of our population that is lower maybe middle income, lower middle income, poor, could still afford something to drive. Now they are not going to be able to, with the banning of new vehicles that are 8 years old. I'm not going through this in any ordered fashion. I'm just selecting a few of the things that are so blatant, that are so anti-poor. No increase income for poor people. All the measures are designed to increase fees, taxes, banning things that are their use, etc. And on the other hand, no stimulus for the economy, but a few selective measures to give benefits to a few people. Few people. Those who produce alcohol of a certain vintage, the new car dealers, etc. This budget, as I said before, it's anti-development, it's anti-poor, it will never achieve the outcomes that are laid out here. I'm now going to, because I have a press conference maybe later in the week to deal with the budget in its entirety, but I'll stop there and ask you if there are any questions.
Sir, what is so wrong with tightening up the tax system to allow people to prove that they are paying? That they are paying?
Is this tightening up the tax system, or is it designed how, if you live in Paramakatoy and you want your license, and would you come to Georgetown to have to get a tax compliance certificate? That is what I'm arguing for, that it will put undue burden on the populace. It is designed not, it's a lazy way of going after tax evaders, to pass the burden on to everyone, including poor people. Including poor people. It's a lazy way of collecting taxes. You pass the burden to everyone, rather than targeting those, because there are people that you can target for audits, etc., that are big tax evaders. But on the other hand, we heard that they're giving directions to the commissioner to settle tax cases for huge companies that will bring paltry sums into the treasury, and they will get the huge write-off, similar to what's happening at the city council. The write-offs for friends and family. Actually, one supporter got a $19 million write-off to an NDC, owed $22 million in taxes. The NDC was directed to collect only $3 million in the settlement of the claim. So they're not targeting the large people. On the other hand, they're settling tax claims for supporters. And then you put a burden on the entire country. So The people living in these riverine areas, anyone in Guyana, poor people, etc., they have to now go to the GRA, trudge into that office there, and I don't even know they had the capacity to handle all of those people. Every time they try to apply for a license to sell in a shop, a license to buy a vehicle, your fitness, anything that you want to do that requires government license. This is it. Yeah.
Sometimes we also see a huge emphasis on raising more revenues. We see even gun licenses being the price to those ones really high, from anywhere from 5,000 to 40,000, and other revenue collecting measures. What's your view on that?
Gun licenses, I don't have a problem with gun license increases. It's the other increases that are to come. When the minister said, I will amend a raft of legislation, he listed a few to increase the fees, etc. So I expect vendors and factory owners and people who fitness and a whole range of things will go up.
Yeah, but when you compare the focus on increased revenues compared to what seems to be big public spending, like on the old age pensions and salary increases, what is your take on that? We have more, it would seem, focus on collecting money than spending
Well,
in certain key areas.
Well, yeah, the president had said that they would focus on collecting more revenue. I don't have a problem with spending. I don't want to deal with the macroeconomics of the budget at this time. But here, the minister said that last year, we had a deflationary situation in Guyana, where inflation was negative. So that's deflation. Countries around the world fight deflation because deflation, like Japan, has been in deflationary mode for many, many years. Deflation is, for them, worse than inflation. They're trying to get inflation in the economy. In this case, the minister launches a budget, and then he boasts about the budget deficit, the fiscal deficit, being below that of 2014, when we didn't have a deflationary situation. What should have happened is that the expenditure should have increased in this year's budget because we had a deflationary situation last year, to ensure that that doesn't reoccur. That doesn't reoccur. But that is something I probably deal with at a subsequent time. There's a lot of repackaging. That is why I did not talk much. The minister spoke about the billions that they're spending on infrastructure. That's one of the plans. And guess what he lists? He lists the road on the East Coast. They're negotiating with the Chinese company to pave the highway on the East Coast. They should have completed those negotiations, because you would recall that there was a public tender under the PPP, and that the contractor won the tender for $47 million. It was the lowest bid, a Chinese company, and we had secured the loan already. It's not new. He spoke about the Parika to Vredenhoop Road. That is a project that is funded by the CDB that was awarded under the People's Progressive Party. He spoke about the bypass road, that we had started that with the Indian line of credit. He spoke about the $15 million on the Citizen Security Program, and goes in a long explanation of its components. And that project, with all of those components, was approved under the PPP, was negotiated under the PPP, and Ramjatan just showed up and announced it. There are the Hinterland program. We had several programs to computerize the hinterland, running into billions of dollars. It's repackaged here. We had a program for the development of the village economy in every area. that would have cost billions of dollars. They're putting in part of the money. That money, or some of the money there, is coming from the Norwegian program. It's a Norwegian program that we've left in place that is funding a lot of the hinterland development. You notice he mentioned about the giving school uniforms. School uniform has been a thing that in the past, he says we're spending 400 million on school uniforms, and that was there in the past. He mentioned this 3B going to 5Bs, but none of that. Is this 3B initiative a voluntary initiative? Or is it funded by the state? And if so, how much money is in the budget? He didn't say that, because it's not. It's some businessmen buying a couple of buses here and there. But how can that substitute for the $1.67 billion that they took away from the families? I can go through, when I look at this, the budget, and listen to some of the things here, I can almost tell you when and where we negotiated these loans, or they are part of our program. The electronic transaction legislation, electronic signature, privacy legislation, all came from the government, the past government. The e-government initiative, the integrated software, they plan to put all of our services online. That was there before. Every single area, you notice the micro and small enterprises unit he mentioned, but they haven't put money into it. It's about training. And by the way, I think the minister had a Freudian slip when he spoke about youth. They are so distant from anything to do with youth development. He spoke about training of some young people. But this is what he said: Mr. Speaker, apart from youth unemployment, this budget seeks to promote youth health and safety, sport and culture. So they are really promoting youth unemployment. He is right about this, because there's nothing to promote. It's on page 60 of his budget speech. He's right about it. It's a Freudian slip. There's nothing in there to promote employment, not only for young people, for anyone. And then we heard these figures about Go Invest last year, stimulated $89 billion of investment and created 8,000 jobs. Where were these jobs created? In what sector? It would be interesting to see what sector they were created in. This budget has nothing to stimulate private sector activities. Yeah.
Mr. John, you had an alternate news. Your former finance minister, former president, this government would have been better off if they did what they did in this budget.
They would have been better off had they had a serious discussion with us to apprise them of where we were taking the country. Had they followed systematically our plans to move the country to a higher level. We identified 7 or 8 new growth poles for Guyana. Every single budget, we put in place measures, policies, programs in place to give effect to those new sources of revenue, apart from trying to fix the traditional sectors. We sought to expand benefits to people in a real way, in a sustainable way. The approach to us, I heard the minister said we chose to stay away, but he did not say that we wrote him asking him for certain information that would have allowed a proper budget to be presented, a framework that recognizes the reality of the world. Here is it, the Minister of Finance saying, the world in 2015 went into trouble. 2016 will be bad. Globally, it's forecasted to encounter problems. China will continue to grow slowly. The US would stop quantitative easing, and therefore interest rates may go up. There is a low demand for much of our exports for commodities, and it will affect Guyana. And then simultaneously, he said, and he spoke about 2015 too, he said, in the latter half of the year, we restored confidence. We did well. You know, the first half of the year, everything was bad under the PPP, and then we did well. But in spite of the global situation, and he's saying that in 2016, we're going to grow by 4-point-something%, and we do well. Where is the connection? Where is